Well, thank you so much, Peter. Really appreciate that wonderful introduction. And thank you, Pasadena Jewish Temple, for sponsoring this incredible event. The turnout today is just tremendous. It is so great to see so many of you here, active, ready to learn, ready to take action, and that's what we need right now. Well, next week, on April 29th, will be the first 100 days of the Trump administration. In that time, our world has turned upside down. In fact, I would say that for his first 100 days, President Trump doesn't have too much to show for it. But I'd like to talk to you specifically as to why I think that. First, the Muslim ban. I will never forget the day when Donald Trump issued the first Muslim travel ban. On Friday, January 27th, he banned entry for refugees and travelers from 7 Muslim countries, even green card holders. Well, the very next day, I received calls, frantic calls actually, from people who had heard from those being detained. One told me that 50 Iranians, who were all legal green card holders, were being detained for hours at LAX. Immediately after that, I received another call after traveling about a constituent who was traveling back from Syria, who was being detained at LAX. He'd been there because he was volunteering his medical services for those who were injured in the war. So at that moment, the next day after that ban was announced, I decided to drop everything and help in any way I could to free these people. I rushed over to LAX. Once I arrived, I found that indeed there were scores of people with similar stories. People with the legal right to be here were kept for hours without food and blocked from receiving legal advice from an attorney. It was outrageous. And when I pressed Customs and Border Patrol for an answer, they resisted and blocked me. In fact, they said, well, answer to my boss, my supervisor. And I said, who's that? And they said, President Donald Trump. So I even got them on the phone only to have them actually hang up on me. Fortunately, though, when they did it, it was in front of all the media that was surrounding me. It was clear for those of us on the ground that this policy was poorly conceived, was hastily executed, and moreover, it was motivated by prejudice and started causing pain as soon as it was signed. One of those persons that was impacted was Sarah Yarjani, a 35-year-old Iranian student who was studying for a master's degree here in holistic health. Sarah was born in Australia, a permanent resident of Austria, residing in the U.S. on a multiple entry student visa, was 9 months away from graduation with a 3.89 GPA. And she was just coming back from a visit to her family when she was detained, strip searched, made to be treated like a criminal with all her possessions taken away, held for 23 hours at LAX, and deported back to Austria for no reason other than that she was an Iranian and a Muslim. Well, thankfully, the courts intervened. In fact, it was a decision to block this Muslim ban made by not just one, not two, but 4 different courts in 4 different states. And because of that, Sarah was able to return. But instead of excitement for her future, Sarah was now filled with dread. She was traumatized by what had happened to her. Well, this ban is exactly the opposite of what America should be. America has opened its doors to refugees, and this refugee vetting process is one of the most involved, intricate, and complex things that you can imagine. It takes 2 years to go through this process. And I have to tell you that when President Trump bombed that facility in Syria and said that it was because he saw these dead, beautiful babies, I thought to myself, what about those beautiful babies amongst these Syrian refugees? What about them? And so, during the joint session of Congress, President's State of the Union, the President's State of the Union address, I invited Sarah to be my guest. I wanted to make sure President Trump could see in the audience those who were hurt by his policies. And I wanted to remind him that it is our obligation as Americans who love this country to ensure that we do not target people because of their religion, nationality, or race. And so, we know that his policy, even though it's been stopped by the courts, and thank goodness his second Muslim ban was stopped by the courts, it still cast a pall over this entire nation. Student applications to the U.S. have gone down. Travelers to this country have gone down. There is actually supposed to be an $18 billion downfall in our tourism budget because of this student ban. And people who are traveling in from other countries are now being detained, including the son of famous fighter Muhammad Ali, who was coming from Jamaica. He was detained, and the CBP officers asked him, how did you get that name? Yeah. And they stopped his mother, who was also coming from Jamaica, and they asked her, what is your religion? Now, can you imagine that being asked that sort of thing right at the border? This is not what our country should be. So we in Congress have expressed our opposition to the Muslim travel ban. We've expressed it loudly. Thank goodness we do have a court system, and we will continue to fight to make sure that this travel ban finally is eliminated. And then there's the hate speech emitted by our president. He has insulted a Mexican-American judge. He's called Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas. He insulted a Muslim-American Gold Star parents, and he's mocked the disabled. And he promoted Steve Bannon to the top level of our government in the White House. A man who made his name by building a platform for white nationalists. Well, thank goodness he was removed from the National Security Council, but really, he should not be at the White House at all. Now, it is no wonder that since the election of Donald Trump, the Southern Poverty Law Center has documented over 1,370 bias-related incidents, including violent attacks and acts of vandalism. American Jews are disproportionately victims of these hate crimes. Muslims have seen, of course, a very, very sharp rise. Just last year, during the heat of the election, the Huffington Post documented 385 anti-Muslim acts. Even here in California, 3 local mosques received hate letters telling them that their members are not welcome here. But instead of healing division, President Trump has decided to worsen them. For instance, it took him until the end of February just to condemn the rise in anti-Semitic acts. And that was only after the White House issued a statement on Holocaust Remembrance Day that intentionally did not mention Jews. Yes. I know, the Holocaust camps. We cannot forget the ignorance that is up there amongst the press secretary, Sean Spicer. Well, President Trump has been obsessed with telling the American people who he perceives to be their enemy and who he thinks they should fear. He does this without nuance, without concern for the impact of his words, and often without even concern for the truth. And that is what fuels his broadsides against immigrants and against Muslims. Well, his statements and his actions have been so shocking and offensive that I had to act, and that's why I did host a Muslim solidarity event at the Masjid Gabriel in San Gabriel, the local mosque here in the San Gabriel Valley. It was attended by religious leaders of all faiths from throughout our area, including our very own Rabbi Raucher. Thank you for that. The community response was incredible. It showed me how important these partnerships are. And when I was back in Washington, D.C., I hosted a briefing with Muslim groups and the Southern Poverty Law Center on how communities can engage with one another. But what is encouraging to me is to see the proliferation of interfaith and unity events all across this nation. We must continue to send strong messages that we will stand together. Now, the other group that Donald Trump wants you to fear are immigrants. He'll tell you that they're violent, even though study after study shows that immigrants commit fewer crimes than native-born individuals. And he'll tell you that they're hurting our economy, even though economists agree that immigrants can raise wages and create more wealth. In fact, we'd be able to reduce our deficit if we had comprehensive immigration reform. So instead, Donald Trump refuses to recognize these well-established facts. He's advanced an agenda designed to make immigrants afraid that at any moment, they or their loved ones could be arrested or deported. Already, our worst fears are coming true as this administration starts raids on immigrant communities across this country. Despite Mr. Trump's repeated claims to focus on the most dangerous criminals, many of those arrested and detained have been law-abiding and productive members of our community, including, and this is the worst part, those who have been protected under President Obama's DACA program, our Dreamers. Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly even said he would begin a policy of separating parents from children when they got to the border. For a man who claims to be religious, Mr. Trump seems to forget that the most repeated commandment in the Bible is our obligation to welcome the stranger. Fortunately, cities like Pasadena, Los Angeles, and actually many other cities have learned that lesson and have declared themselves to be sanctuary cities or immigrant-friendly cities, meaning that our local law enforcement will not act like a deportation force. There's also currently a bill that will make our whole state a sanctuary state. I think all these actions are important because immigrants are so vital to our community and because they should feel trust in our local police so that they can help to solve the crimes or report the crimes that are occurring in our communities. And law enforcement themselves are against being part of a deportation force. First of all, it's not their job, but also they say that if they are made to be that, it makes it harder for them to do their work, since they must have the trust of the community. But that is being ignored by President Trump. One of his first executive orders was to allow the cutting off of federal funds to sanctuary cities. Well, that sends a message that immigrants are unwelcome here, but it also makes us all worse off if federal funds are pulled away from schools, from health care, from roads, and from bridges. That is totally unacceptable. And that's why, as chair of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, I joined our other caucuses and our Democratic caucus to demand answers through meetings with the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, John Kelly. I was, in fact, able to schedule this meeting with our caucus this past month. I asked about the aggressive actions of ICE officers and Customs and Border Patrol officers. I asked about the profiling of travelers at airports and the targeting of law-abiding, non-criminal immigrants for deportation. I do have to say that Secretary Kelly was not the most responsive of persons. His attitude was that the CBP and ICE officers are obeying the letter of the law, and if you don't like it, change the law. Well, I can tell you that I've been working on changing the law for all 8 years. But that doesn't mean that we don't continue to push for humane policies that will treat people fairly. During that meeting, we also pushed Secretary Kelly with regard to Dreamers. So many of these young people are going to school and working. This is a program that's giving them the assurance that they can continue to be productive members of our communities. I would say this was the one area where Secretary Kelly was more sympathetic, but I was very alarmed to see that we do have Dreamers that are amongst those being deported, and that is not right. Well, I did ask Secretary Kelly to come to Los Angeles, to our district, in fact. You know why? I wanted him to hear from our stakeholders right here and our advocates right here who are experiencing these issues. I want him to hear from the people as to how the Trump administration's policies are affecting people at the grassroots. He did agree, so we will set this up. And regardless, I will continue speaking out so that we can make sure that our voices and the voices of good people adversely affected by President Trump's policies are heard at the highest levels. Now, let me say a few words about what's happening with healthcare. People everywhere I go want to know what's happening. Well, recently I got promoted to the powerful House Ways and Means Committee. I was so glad for many reasons, but one of the biggest reasons was that this is the committee through which any health care bill has to go. So we have a direct say-so over what is going on with health care. So when the Republicans introduced their repeal of the Affordable Care Act, which I call Trump Care, we were one of the first 2 committees to mark up that bill. Now, for 7 years, Republicans in Congress said their main goal was to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And even though they had 7 years to get this bill ready, they crafted this bill within days, and even their own members could not see a copy of the bill until 36 hours before it was due for the markup. It was outrageous. And also, prior to the mark of the bill, there were absolutely no hearings. And there was no CBO score, Congressional Budget Office score, so that we didn't actually have the analysis of what this bill will cost this country in terms of people losing their insurance and what it would do to our economy. Well, naturally, I was opposed to the bill, as were my fellow Democrats. The Republicans passed it anyway, without even any of that knowledge. Finally, a few days later, the CBO analysis came out, and I was astounded. It confirmed to me that this would have been one of the cruelest bills in congressional history. It would have kicked 24 million people off their health insurance. It would have created an age tax allowing insurance companies to charge older people 5 times more than younger people for their premiums. It would have increased the cost of those premiums for that age range for those earning $30,000 by an average of $6,000. Can you imagine anybody being able to afford it? $6,000 per year, yes. It would have ended our prohibition on gender discrimination in insurance premiums, because prior to the ACA, women had to pay more for their individual health care insurance. And it would have defunded Planned Parenthood. So many reasons to object to this bill, absolutely. But as time progressed, it was clear that the bill was in trouble. Moderate Republicans thought that this bill would have harmed too many people because it would have ended the Medicaid expansion. The hardline conservative wing of the Republican Party, called the Freedom Caucus, was upset because they thought that this horrible bill didn't go far enough, in terms of taking away health care. Speaker Ryan knew that not a single Democrat would vote for this horrendous bill. So in order to get the votes of the Freedom Caucus, he gave in at the last minute on the Friday in which we were going to vote on it, and actually eliminated the requirement for insurance companies to have essential health benefits, that certain package of basic things that should be in anybody's health care insurance, like how about prescription drugs and hospitalization and maternal health care. But that just made it worse for the moderate Republicans. And so the Capitol received a record number of calls, emails, and letters, all opposing. Actually, I know many people wonder if it's worth it to send in a letter to somebody like me, but what I was very fond of telling people at that moment is that during that week I got 500 letters opposing this bill. I actually counted them up. 98.7% of the letters were against this bill. Well, finally, the Republicans knew that they did not have the votes, and Speaker Ryan pulled the bill. But I want you to be on guard, because President Trump could do things that could undermine the bill just through executive action. He could, for instance, not pay the cost subsidies that would make health care affordable for those who need the extra help. And that's an essential part of what made the ACA successful. The other thing is that they haven't given up talking about the bill and trying to get some agreement. So that is circulating. In fact, their latest proposal is to eliminate community ratings, which prevents insurance companies from charging sick people more than healthy people for insurance coverage. Anyway, it's a fancy way of saying that it would bring the ability for insurance companies to discriminate against people with pre-existing conditions. So moderates rejected that proposal, and it has again left Trump care at a stalemate. But they're continuing to push. So we must be on guard and make sure that this does not succeed and that the American people can still have their health care. And lastly, let me say a few words about Israel. When I was first elected to Congress, my first trip overseas was to Israel. I learned so much on that trip, not only about Israel's successes making the desert bloom and becoming a global tech leader, but also about the dire need for a two-state solution. True peace and security for the Israelis and dignity for the Palestinians cannot be imposed. It must be agreed upon by both sides. And so, yes. And so I was very alarmed when one of the first actions that President Trump took was to nominate David Friedman for U.S. ambassador. He is a major funder of the settlement movement and has even said that he's in favor of a one-state solution, which is really no solution at all. Though it is only the Senate, not the House, that confirms nominations, I did speak out against his nomination and his undiplomatic demeanor. And I did sign that letter led by Congressmember Price and Connolly, insisting that President Trump reaffirm that the two-state solution remains the U.S. priority, and that it is the only way to peacefully resolve the conflict. Well, in conclusion, let me say, I'm going to be counting on leaders like you to make sure that the people know how these policies are affecting them and how they can make their voices heard. We need to make sure that this country remains the country that we know. This cannot be a country controlled by Russia. We must have a true investigation that is independent of the Russian. And Trump must reveal his tax return. Did you know that for the past 40 years, our presidents have revealed their tax returns? But not this president. What does he have to hide? The people have a right to know. And that is why the actions of you, the people, are so important. I've been so inspired by the activism of the people. I went and spoke at the Women's March in LA. I was amazed by the turnout, 750,000 people. I told you that I went down to LAX for the Muslim ban, but what inspired me immediately was the sight of hundreds of people protesting, chanting. They were there all night. I was shocked their voices were still there and not hoarse. But there were people of all races and religions and backgrounds. And in the days that followed after that, it turned into thousands of people in all these airports all across the nation. So we need to stay active. Whether it is through this temple, whether it is through these different chapters of Indivisible that are popping up, whether it is in the many advocacy groups that are out there. We need you to stay informed. Congress needs to hear from you, and they need to hear from your neighbors and our community. Our victory over Trump care shows that we can have real impact. And so I'm going to be counting on you to make sure that a Trump care 2.0 cannot be, and that this kind of bombing won't get us into World War III. And I can tell you that I am so heartened by these elections. Like, what about Georgia? A district that's been solidly Republican for so many years, and then this young man, John Ossoff, nearly actually makes that election outright with 48% of the vote. It was tremendous. We have actually the best opportunity ever in the upcoming 2018 elections to turn things around. And right here in California, we have numerous Republican districts that actually voted for Hillary in this last November election. Yes. There is change going on, and that's why I believe that the congressional members that are in those districts are truly vulnerable. I've never seen so much activism from Democrats that want to run in those districts, challenge them, and make sure that we can have a fairer America.
Yes.
So I hope that we can all get active, that we can all keep fighting. Let's make sure that this is an America that truly stands for justice and equality. Thank you all very much.
So on behalf of all of us, thank you, Congresswoman Chu. We have many questions, some of which I think were answered quite explicitly by you. I'm just going to read them. What can we do, we as congregants, we as individuals, what can we do to help undocumented immigrants?
Well, we need to make sure that we support them. I think, well, first of all, we need to make sure that they know their rights. You know that the police, ICE cannot come in without a warrant, and actually the police cannot come in without a warrant. And what some of these ICE agents have done is to come into a home purporting to be asking for someone, and then get into the home. They're actually let in the home, at which time they just look at the other folks there and then arrest them if they find that they're undocumented. Well, that is not right. But also, what is terrible is that they didn't need to be let into that house in the first place. They need a warrant in order to do that, in order to actually go in and look around like that. The other thing too is that we have to make sure that the undocumented know that those who may have police written on their uniforms may actually be ICE agents. And this is something we're trying to stop. It is not right that they have the word police and think that it's their local police officers when in reality they are ICE agents. So that's why I have been holding know your rights kinds of forums, and that's actually one thing that could be done here locally, to have that kind of seminar right here in the area. The other thing is that we need to speak out. I mean, the good thing is that Pasadena has actually already spoken out by taking a vote as a sanctuary city. And so I thought it was. And so the more cities and the more jurisdictions that take that kind of stance, then the less ability does the ICE have for turning our area into a police state, which is really what I worry about. In the meanwhile, we need to protest against the policies that are fomenting this horrible anti-immigrant attitude that President Trump is trying to evoke. And that is, we should not be building more detention centers. Actually, that's what President Trump wants to do. He wants to build more detention centers so that he can just fill them up with immigrants. Of course, he wants to build his border wall. And I tell you, we Democrats in Congress, we will not vote for a bill with one penny for that border wall. For a moment, because, you know, President Trump said Mexico's going to pay for it. But you know what he put into his budget? Over $2 billion for the border wall of our taxes to build this border wall. And by the way, it would only be a boondoggle because the cost to build the whole thing would be $16 billion. So he just wants to start this process so he can continue doing it, and it would be such an utter waste of our taxpayers' dollars besides being inhumane. So we have to stand up against those kinds of policies as well. And of course, we must push for comprehensive immigration reform. That is what will make this country whole.
What can be done to protect Roe v. Wade to keep women safe and healthy?
It is so important to make sure we protect Roe versus Wade. This is why I opposed the nomination of Gorsuch. Now, we have to just keep up the pressure. President Trump has said that he wasn't going to overturn Roe versus Wade. I don't know if we can trust that. That's why it has to be the voice of the American people saying that it would be cruel and unjust and that it would be not right to overturn that very, very important decision that has been here since 1973. This has been so important to so many women all across this nation. And he has to know that if he does something like that, then he and his party will pay at the polls.
Yes.
And that if you saw a vote like that for John Ossoff, just think how many times that could be repeated and in an even stronger fashion, so that he would actually get that backlash.
I'm very concerned about the drastic cuts which the current administration has proposed for the EPA. What can you do and what can we do to safeguard clean air and water?
The things that President Trump has done to the EPA are criminal. In his budget, he drastically cuts each department, the Department of Education, the Department of, even the State Department. The one department that he cuts the most is the EPA, by 31%. And that will force the EPA to lose 25% of its force. Can you imagine that? These are the people in charge of making sure that we have clean air, clean water, that we're freed from toxins. And yet, he wants to cut it. But that's just part of it. he has actually been doing these barrage of executive orders which have taken away the incredible initiatives that President Obama took to protect us. And that is, for instance, there were executive orders to protect us from coal plants that pollute the streams that we have. Well, he overturned that with an executive order. So there are numerous executive orders that he has done along that line. And we have to raise our voices to protest this. We have to make sure that we fight this. And the worst thing that could happen is that he reverses what President Obama did with climate change. We took such a great step forward with that climate change agreement. And we cannot go backwards on that front. So we need to make sure that he knows that we want action on climate change, that we need to ensure that we have people who enforce our clean air and our clean water laws. So I hope that we can have as strong a force as possible, as strong a voice as possible too, that can make sure that we maintain that. But in reality, I think it's going to take a change at the ballot box.
Yep.
What are you doing and what can we do to assure federal funding isn't taken away from sanctuary cities like the city of Los Angeles and we hope the city of Pasadena?
I actually think that if he tries that there'll be quite a legal challenge. I don't think he actually has the legal standing to be able to do that, because what basis is there for taking money away from health services or from after-school grants or something like this because you are a sanctuary city? The funding streams are not the same, and yet President Trump is implying that he could take away one level of funding that is in one completely different pot because of an action that you took in the immigration arena. I do think that there would be tremendous challenges here, and that here I think we would have to look at the courts to stop this from happening. So let's make sure that we are ready to fight. Thank goodness we have Javier Becerra as our Attorney General. In fact, I have to tell you that the state of California has been so visionary, because not only did Governor Brown pick Javier Becerra, who really knows what's going on in Washington, D.C., but also Eric Holder as our consultant for the state of California. So I know that they will go to the core of it all in terms of challenging this.
What are the chances of the Democrats getting Republican support to stop President Trump's funding of the wall?
Well, there are Republicans that are so upset about the wall. They tend to be the Republicans that are right on that border. They know that having a wall would be very damaging to the economy of their state. So it will be difficult for him to get support. We know, of course, that the Democrats will not support this. So where is he going to get the funding? Actually, I do have to tell you an important date is coming up, which is Friday, April 29th. It's actually the date when we're supposed to vote on keeping our government open. It's the refunding of federal government. And so if it's a clean extension of our government, of course we would vote for it. I mean, if it doesn't have anything added to it, but it's simply what is in existence, then we would. But if it has something terrible in it, and I'll tell you the two top things for me would be the funding of the border wall. The other would be if they defunded Planned Parenthood. I know, of course, that the Democrats won't vote for it. So I think that there would be Republicans that would join us on protesting the border wall. So if they do include that in the budget, they would lose some Republican votes.
This is a tough one. Along those lines, would you support a government shutdown in order to prevent a budget proposal that, among other harmful elements, would defund Planned Parenthood?
Well, now, I think that a government shutdown is not a good thing. In general, it can cause a lot of harm to the economy. But I tell you, I'm not going to accept a budget that is harmful to the people, that is so objectionable that the overall damage to America would be just too much to bear. And so, yes, I mean, for me, I will not vote for a bill that defunds Planned Parenthood or funds the border wall. So, yes.
Okay, back to healthcare. You know, is my passion and Israel. So, does the next round with Trump care, as we call it, have any better chance of passing? And what roles can we play?
So I was on a call of the Democratic members of Congress today, where we were discussing this very question. And the opinion of our top leaders of the Democrats is that the Republicans can't get around their essential problem, which is that in order to get the votes of the Freedom Caucus, they have to make the bill more conservative. They have to continue to make it devastating as far as the essential benefits, and they have to continue. In fact, actually, their current proposal, we think, would actually make more than 24 million people lose their health care. And if that is the case, then the moderate Republicans won't vote for it. If Speaker Ryan goes for that. If he goes for the Freedom Caucus proposal, the moderate Republicans won't go for it. Now, here's where I want to tell you about the power of all those town halls. Those town halls all across the nation have really had an impact. I am just amazed at how many people have come out to those town halls in middle America, well, really everywhere, and where people have come and confronted their Congress member on this very issue. They have talked about their stories. They've said, what are you going to do about this health care? Are you going to take an action that will make me lose my health care? And they have been so active. Well, how about Congressmember Mike Kaufman of Colorado, who left his own town hall at 8 minutes early and left out the back door? Or how about Jason Shavitz, who was shouted down at his town hall, and you heard the story that broke yesterday? He's not returning to Congress. I thought that was so interesting, especially since everybody knows about the story of his town hall. I think that there are tons of Republicans who are in marginal seats that are scared. And in fact, that very day when Speaker Ryan gave in that Friday, that fateful Friday, where he gave in to the Freedom Caucus and said, okay, we'll strip this bill of the essential benefits. Barbara Comstock of Virginia then said she was going to vote no on the health care bill. Why am I mentioning her name? Because she barely got in. Virginia is a swing state. That Virginia seat is a swing state. She knows that if she supports this Trump care bill, she's dead. So that's the message that has got to get out there for those districts, especially those districts that have closer registration. And I can tell you, even if Republicans pretend to not pay attention or discount all those town halls, no, they're paying attention. They know. They know that people are really upset, and it will make a difference in terms of what they do on this vote. I think, in fact, knowing how people responded to the Trump care bill, I think they're even more entrenched, actually. And in fact, since they went back home during this break here, this holiday break, they have even gotten more feedback from the people. For those that indicated they were not voting for health care, the people applauded them. They know that if they turn around suddenly and go for Trump Care 2.0, that they'll lose all that goodwill. So it really has made a psychological impact on them.
You must be exhausted. So we have a few more questions. We've answered many of the questions, but maybe two more? Okay. I'm going to merge two or three, if you don't mind, folks. This is in terms of the defense budget and recent actions by the Trump administration. What can you and what will you do to reject the $50 billion increase in the defense budget? And along those lines, as relates to the Defense Department, two questions actually in one. How scared should we be of President Trump getting us into war with North Korea?
The Trump budget is one of the cruelest budgets I've ever seen. It increases the military budget by $52 billion. And where does he get that money from? From all the domestic programs. From Meals on Wheels, from after-school programs for kids. He eliminates the National Endowment for the Arts and NPR and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. He makes that huge cut I told you about, 31% of the EPA, but he cuts the Department of Education by some 20%, which ultimately would hurt our Title I programs, basically our programs for low-income kids. How about this one? A $6 billion cut in the National Institute for Health. This is the institution that is in charge of finding cures and treatments for diseases like cancer, diabetes, and Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. So to cut that is so criminal, I can't even believe it. So the budget is something that's absolutely and totally unacceptable. Now the good news is that it is not something that we have to even pay any attention to, really. The tradition is that the president puts out their version of the budget, and then the congressional appropriators actually do their business on the budget. And so congressional members are going to have to pay attention to their own conscience as to whether we actually do these things. Like, for instance, the Trump budget actually puts zero money for the community development block grants. And these are block grants that help cities enormously. Here in Pasadena, I can tell you that it does a huge amount of good in very important areas for low-income areas. And so we will have to, again, have a voice in the budget to make sure that our priorities are taken care of. So back to North Korea and the bombings. Okay, first of all, let me say that the bombing in Syria and the bombing in Afghanistan were something that should have been done with congressional approval. In fact, any military action really should be done with congressional approval, and it should be done with what's called the AUMF, the Authorization of Use of Military Force. But President Trump didn't pay attention to it at all. You know, why do we have this kind of provision? It's from the War Powers Act of 1973. It's because Congress should be debating whether we get ourselves entrenched in a war. It's a time for us to ask the questions, the critical questions about what the long-term goal is. It's a chance for us to ask, for instance, a question that I've had since President Trump started doing these things, which is, do you have a coherent policy about what you're going to do about Assad and Syria? I don't think he has a coherent policy. What's the long-term goal there? Or is it just to show that you're a mighty macho guy? I mean, you know? So it must be properly debated. We, the Democrats, actually demanded that we be brought back to session to debate this before he takes any other military action.
This is a merge of a half a dozen questions, and it relates to looking towards the 2018 elections. I'll do my best. Looking at recent special elections and the strategy of the Democratic Party, and looking to the Republican Congress, which is not always in agreement with President Trump, what's the best way for Americans to take, for Democrats, yes, you're all patriotic Americans, to take back control of the House and Senate? And then a final one that relates to that, how do we engage millennials, my students at University of Southern California, in this process to take back the House and Senate in 2018?
We have the greatest chance ever of doing this. We have such activism amongst the people of America, not just Democrats actually, it's independents and it's Republicans who are disenchanted with Trump. It was really amazing to see the response to this young man, 30-year-old John Ossoff in Georgia. So he puts himself into this election for the seat that was opened up when Tom Price became Secretary of Health and Human Services. And so the call was made. And did you know that people from all around the nation gave $10, $20, $50, and he ended up with $8.3 million for his campaign. And volunteers just came down in droves to do all kinds of precinct walking. He outperformed the polls. He was polling at 40%, he came in at 48%. So it showed that there is an outpouring of sentiment there. Now, we just have a lot of seats where we could make a difference. I mean, let's look close to here. How about Darrell Issa? You know that he only succeeded in his election by just a handful of votes, which was shocking for somebody who'd been in that seat for so long. And so we need to have a good, strong campaign against someone like him. Steve Knight is another one where we can make a difference. And just the seats that I can name that actually went for Hillary in California, they were Issa, Steve Knight, Mimi Walters, Dana Rohrabacher, Ed Royce. These are seats where we can Oh, of course, there's my favorite person that we should unseat, Devin Nunes. His behavior was absolutely scandalous. To actually go to the White House, get information from them, and come back the next day and pretend that he got this information about wiretapping, that was absolutely shameful. And we have actually called on him to resign from his position as head of So there's lots of opportunity, but we, the Democrats in Congress, know that we have to start early. We have to start early with the recruitment of the candidates. We have to start early in terms of the fundraising. We have to put them in place because, these kinds of things don't happen overnight. It has to actually start right now with these candidates getting in place so that they can understand what it takes to run in a campaign. So I hope that you can join us in this effort and that all of you are on guard and ready to be able to participate in these elections. I believe that we have a great chance to certainly increase the seats. I hope that it is enough so that we can actually take back the House. But even having a whole lot more Democratic seats would make a huge difference because Republicans then would have to go to us for certain difficult bills that need to be passed. And it would make it much more difficult for them to pass bills, even a million times more difficult for them to pass something like Trump Care 2. So, yes.
How many people thought this was a good program? On behalf of all of us here, I want to thank you for your courage, your leadership, your eloquence. We stand with you. Thank you for standing with us. It's an honor to have you represent us. Well, everybody here, we want to give you a little present. Sometimes a congressman gives, a gift or a certificate to people when she comes to see them. We want to give one to you. And this is a sign that some of us have put up, that we're putting on the lawn. Welcome. We must not stand idly by from Leviticus. And I just want to, I'm sure this is going to go right up in your office. Representative Judy Chu has been a friend in so many ways, going back many years to my time at Union Station. She was always there as an advocate for us, and it's just a pleasure to have you tonight. This is the very first program of our brand new Social Justice Committee at PJTC. We have some other exciting programs coming up, and I want to just tell you about it very quickly, but I think you're all going to be interested. First of all, this is for Representative Chu. Tonight was a conversation, but on Sunday in Claremont, at the Taylor Reception Center at 1775 North Indian Hill, there'll be a town hall that Representative Chu is going to be hosting and taking questions. And as we know, sometimes people come out who are rowdy. So if you want to go to the town hall, you'll be welcome. It's really important for us to support great leaders in our federal government like Judy Chu. We can do that at the town hall.